Salam again, and I hope you guys had a nice time, nice weekend. I want to appreciate the people who have really been following and advising, especially those who have requested that we do a more professional video. Believe you me, our editing team is working around the clock, and just to say that this was African History Month or Black History Month, and necessitated that we release these raw videos. So bear with us, and thank you so much. Continue to like and subscribe my YouTube channel, Isaac Mairori. Last time we left when my grandfather had acquired a piece of land, like I said, from N all the way through to Ngong Road, all the way to Mudangari and back to N. And these are the five brothers who actually acquired the same land, but extending from, again, what we call today Uthiru, all through to what we call 87 to Dagoretti Center, all through to what we call Waithaka, again through to Ngina Road and Ngong Road, and back from Ngong Road to what we call Lavington and some part of Kangemi. Now, these crisscrossing boundaries could not be avoided. They were necessary because the large chunk of this land was still a forest, and people did not have enough personnel or families to protect their boundaries. So this was expected, and like I said, natural laws were used, so everything was done naturally. The titling came courtesy of the written law, and it is consistent as at that. My great-grandfather, like I said, had to marry 6 more wives so that he can be able to protect his land, and he had to employ 2 families of warriors that ended up inheriting in his property. My grandfather was a traditional priest, and him having people that depended on him and big land, he was able also to become like an elder, respected elder, and there were very thick rings that were worn by elderly men who were now given the right not to work, but they will also come to a certain homestead and request or demand for a goat or a calf for them to eat with his warriors. Now, during demarcation, and demarcation meant a lot of things. Demarcation came along with the Kipande system, the IDs, which were rejected by most of the Africans, especially the Kikuyus, who had not subscribed to Christianity, and they were not happy with the invasion of the Europeans. And there were consequences. They were transferred from their homes, they were taken to concentration camps away from where they knew as home, to as far as Lamu, Lodwar, and so on and so forth. Again, demarcation came with the Clarion call of the colonialists who went to Britain and requested the retired Second World War war veterans to come and grab land in what they called the White Highlands, which stretched from the lower side of Mount Kenya as you proceed from Nairobi all the way to Mount Elgon. These were productive lands, volcanic soil, and they were barely densely populated. But they got very few people who were interested from England, and so they went to South Africa. Now, the history of South Africa and Kenya at this point is almost synonymous, because when they're writing about Kenya and South Africa, they talk about the migration of the 17th century. And they were saying that Africans were still migrating into the countries that the Europeans demarcated during the Berlin Conference in 1895. But this is different. Africans, even though they were migrating within the landmass that God gave them. They did not move from one ocean or sea across to the next land. They were within the intrinsic right land for their production and for their survival. Now, these guys comes to Kenya. They come with their all military power and every might, with horses and chariots and stuff, and they start demarcating lands that never belonged to them. And like for example, the Church Scotland mission missionaries had demanded 3,000 acres in Kikuyu. So this is demarcation. But they only got 1,000 from the Hinga family. And that's why Wayaki Wahinga is a hero who will always be indebted by a lot of Kenyans, because he died fighting for the right of their land and against alienation from African homes and their land, which was preserved for posterity. We didn't have bank accounts, we didn't have anything that would have projected the future, and so on and so forth. So land became very important resource for the means of production. Now, and like I said, land did not belong to a person, it belonged to a nation, because if you had a large chunk of land, it was not only yours and your family. Other people from a nation who needed to survive under you came and requested, and you had to give them a place to build a home and land to till. It is very important for us to remember that this is when people divided the Kenyan land. Like for example, Lord Delamere got 150 acres. All right, and he also acquired a conservancy that was 3,000 acres. So you can see how they were dividing lands. There was a guy called F.O.B. Wilson, who in Machakos acquired 6,000 acres, and he could only utilize 80 acres. Some of the injustices, you see, they were across board. There was another block in Kiambu called AL Block. The owner owned 1,850 acres, and he could only till 200 acres. There was another guy in Kiambu called R. Hancock. He owned 2,000 acres, and he could only till 200 acres. So it is the same story in Laikipia, in Nyahururu, and so on and so forth. And this is the demarcation where we were told that the government is identifying land to put social utilities for government services to come close to the people. But in the same process, those who did not conform to the new rules, because they had to be explained to us, they were marginalized and they were transferred to new lands where they were kept in deplorable conditions, and they were tagged as terrorists and they were tortured. But this was a divide and rule technique. So people divide lands, including VM. Now land had 250 and it could only utilize 70. Now, away from that, I'm talking about the history right after or before the First World War, which in my context of this history, it is not a world war. Even the Second World War is not a world war. This is a domineering history that is pushed down the throats of the people of the world who did not instigate, and they did not provoke, and they were not provoked for this war to happen. Actually, the people from the global south, since they were under colonies, they were taken by force. My grandfather lost his firstborn, like I said last time, and his secondborn to the First World War. Fortunately, they came back. But in this so-called Second World War, even his most educated son, my grandfather, Mwiruru Wandoaru, was taken. But this time, for him, he was mature enough and he had already trained as a plumber. But he was taken as a medical corp. And so my great-grandfather was so furious. His land has been demarcated. The Dagoretti corner part of the land was given as a market for the white people settling in Karen. The Mudangari piece of part of his land was given to as a market for people in Lavington and in Westlands, and N was given as a market to the villagers in Uthiru, Kangemi. These are the names, the current names, but before they were called, they had villages. And so, and what really hit him is when his home, he was vacated from his home where the International Research Livestock Institute is situated, Ilri. That was his land, and he was sharing with, like I said, his neighbor called Mr. Mugea. And their homes were burnt, and they had to vacate. My great-grandfather went to what is called Kahuho Road, where we have a Presbyterian church called Goshi. This is where he lived until he died. This is where he blessed all his land. This is where he blessed all his children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and bequeathed this land to generations of his family. Now, this ceremony, like I said, he was a priest and he was an elder, involved sacrificing of goat and smearing children with blood, and the animal offal byproducts, but they were not, you cannot call them byproduct because they had not really left the animal yet. And prayers and water and alcohol were used. Now, it is something that I'd like to testify. Today, whoever sells the land of Ndwaru Washege does not find peace. You either die or you live in grief and in bad omen. So if at all it is a question of whether prayers work or these were satanic rituals and so on and so forth, Africans did not have Satan or devil in their equation of spirituality. They had evil spirits and good spirits and God. We didn't have angels. We didn't have all these things that were brought later. And so he blessed also his wives and the wife of his brother and his children. I mean, this was so generous. A man who was mistreated in his home, he has been vacated by foreigners, but he took arms with his warriors and he had to reclaim his land at the Dagoretti Center government office. And he was accused. He went to Dagoretti Corner, where his land was extracted. So a meeting was done there, and he called these foreigners hyenas. And was asked why. He said, "You came, you took my land somewhere. I kept quiet. You took another one. You took another one. It is only hyena that attacks the same place twice." And this is how he was compensated. 50 acres behind Alliance High School at a place called Maihe. So we shall continue next time, and I hope this has been encouraging and enlightening, and we hope that we'll continue with the same spirit of enlightening people of their history and adding value to the pot of African histories. May God bless you. Have a good weekend and have a blessed week, and may you continue to uphold and uplift our Black African identity. Much blessing.